Hello everyone and welcome back to the Trails series retrospective. Last time I took a look at the Trails in the Sky trilogy, so be sure to check that out as well if you like this video. Before we continue, if you'd like to support this retrospective series, be sure to check out my KoFi down in the description. You'll gain access to videos like this a whole week early for donating as little as $1. Also, I'm here to announce that I recently opened a Redbubble. I'm selling various art prints there, including Trails merch, so please be sure to check that out in the description. Without further ado, let's dive right into the Crossbell arc. The language barrier can be a bit of a cruel mistress. Sometimes you have companies that manage to release most of their games in the West, but sometimes you don't. An unfortunate reality is that often these games will never make it outside of Japan, but other times fans may go out of their way to make those games available to Western players regardless. Trials of Mana, previously known as Seiken Densetsu 3, was one of those games. Up until 2019, it seemed like this game from 1995 was never going to be released in the West. Yet, because of dedicated fans, I was able to experience it during some of the more formative years of my life, long before its official release. Yet there are even more examples. Mother 3, Tales of Destiny 2, Shining Force 3, and half of the Fire Emblem franchise are all notable ones that come to mind. Due to varying circumstances, we started getting the Trails series pretty late, with Sky First Chapter's localization coming in 2011, and a 4-year translation period for its follow-up. As of 2011, there were 5 games in the series out in Japan, and we've been doing catch-up ever since then. But I'll go into that in more detail in a later video. TrailsFromZero and TrailsstoAzure, originally released in 2010 and 2011 respectively, are very important games to the overall series canon. Yet despite this, Xseed and after that NIS were tasked with releasing the ColdSteel games instead, as they were newer releases. A decision I don't entirely agree with for reasons I will go into when we get to ColdSteel 2, 3, and 4, but it is a decision I understand at least. Now, while there were fan translations floating around for the Crossbell games, they were pretty low effort with some translation choices that were, let's just say, questionable. What the heck you said? Snivy, I am begging for an answer.
The definition of the word. Oh,
Guys,
here.
Get ready! Get ready, guys! Crossbell really is a city! That's where the Geofront team came in. Geofront, a team of fans who wanted to make a professional translation, worked together to not just translate the games, but make them a passable port by modern standards. They include lots of quality of life features, turbo, text logs, minor graphical updates, and a number of other features. But then something surprising happened. After they finished Azure's translation, NIS announced that they would be localizing the games, basing it off Geofront's translation, something that is borderline unprecedented. So why did I go into this much detail about fan translations? Well, aside from padding out the intro, this shows the level of passion from fans of this arc. Before the Geofront translation was even finished, there was insane amounts of praise for these games, and I think that passion fueled the Geofront team to want to make these as accessible as possible to a larger fan base. Also, their increasing importance in the later games was probably a big factor too. These are incredibly beloved games in the Trails fanbase, featuring a cult following similar to that of Fire Emblem 4 and Mother 3. Having played these games, what do I think? Now, I'm sure some of you are considering playing these games as your first Trails, and as blasphemous as it is, I will actually consider that angle as I tackle these games. Now, I don't think you should personally, but I do think these games function decently enough standalone, with the exception of one subplot. A subplot that not only spoils the Sky games, but will also mean very little to new players. Now, I will be avoiding talking about that for a bit, but I will have timestamps in this video for when I do talk about that subplot, so keep an eye out for that. Now that said, I definitely think you should play the Sky games first via Steam. They are relatively cheap, run well on most PCs, go for sale pretty regularly, and in my opinion they have some of the best stories in the entire series. And if you play those first, you won't be missing out much with this story, so please go ahead and do so. But if you need a bit more convincing, again, go and watch my previous video up through the end of the Sky First Chapter section. That should give you a good idea of what you're getting into, and I hope you enjoy the games. Now before I continue, I need to give a disclaimer. Everything I'm about to say will be about the PC and Switch versions of TrailsFromZero and TrailsstoAzure. The PC and Switch versions are enhanced releases with better visuals, quality of life changes, and many features that were previously only in the Geofront version. Features that are not on PS4. The PC and Switch releases feature a text log, tons of UI customization, improved graphics, and more. Personally, I think PC is the best way to play the whole series since all of the games are on it, but Switch seems like a pretty valid way to go due to handheld play. Unless you have one of those Steam Decks, that definitely works. The PS4 version is just a straight translation of the Japanese Kai release. This is information we found out only about a month prior to release, and while I'll spare you the understandable reaction to this. The PS4 version is fine and includes several enhancements from the original release, most notably Turbo and a different feature I will talk about later. Special thanks to Infielder Seth for the PS4 footage. That said, I'm so stoked to talk about these games, so let's get over the barrier and talk about two of my favorite games in the entire Trails series.
The autonomous state of Crossbell. On the surface, the hustle and bustle of every day passes from dawn to dusk. Yet under that facade, there is something far more sinister living in the underworld. Criminals and common thugs are protected by the very system meant to protect us. As time and again we have buckled under the pressure of our neighbors, the Erebonian Empire and the Calvard Republic. This situation, dubbed the Crossbell problem, has led to skirmishes between our neighbors ever since our very founding. Each nation waging their claim to Crossbell as part of their territory. It's only thanks to a piece of paper known as the Non-Aggression Pact that the people can breathe one big sigh of relief. Yet those less ignorant know each nation's influence has seeped far too deep for us to truly relax. Our law enforcement time and time again find themselves helpless before our neighbors. In search of justice, the people now look to the bracers, but even they can only do so much thanks to their code. The city where anyone can dream has become the city of sin. The police find themselves at a crossroads as a green young man named Lloyd Bannings arrives on the scene. While Bannings has returned home from abroad to begin work for the Crossbell Police Department, things have begun to move, and Crossbell may never be the same. With how things are developing, I can't help but think, how long will Crossbell last?
Last time we looked at the Kingdom of Liberl, a small, more contemporary region within the Trails universe. However, TrailsFromZero marks the series' first departure into a new land, and it is quite the shift. The autonomous state of Crossbell is probably my favorite setting of the entire Trails universe. There are many reasons for that, but let's get into what makes TrailsFromZero and TrailsstoAzure so different from the Sky series. First, compared to Liberl, Crossbell is significantly more modern in its aesthetic. Here, orbital technology has not only advanced, but is booming, with cell phones and the internet now being brand new inventions in this universe. The first time I played these games coming off Sky, I was in a little bit of shock considering how much technology had developed in Crossbell compared to the previous games, but it's something you do really get used to, and it's a setting I really enjoy. Additionally, Crossbell is the smallest region in the series up to this point, being about a third the size of Liberl. But because of this, a lot more detail is put into the individual parts of Crossbell, with memorable vistas across every corner. Also, to remind you of some exposition I gave last time, Crossbell is northeast of Liberl and is wedged in between the Erebonian Empire and the Republic of Calvard. These nations have long fought over this territory, but it's also led to Crossbell being sort of a melting pot of both cultures, with the East District having a notable Eastern aesthetic, while the West is more like the architecture we're used to. But to go into detail on how the setting affects the narrative, we'll have to talk about the first game in the Crossbell arc. So let's talk about TrailsFromZero. TrailsFromZero is one of my favorite games in the whole series. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it is better than Sky's second chapter, but this game is just incredibly solid. I originally played Zero via the Geofront translation shortly after finishing Sky the Third back in 2020, and I loved it. Almost everything about it. Now after this replay, I can confidently say that my feelings on it have not changed too much. But to talk about my first experience with Zero, I feel like I kinda need to come clean about Sky the Third. I went into that game in early 2020 itching to start a new adventure in a new land, so its pocket dimension setting kind of alienated me. Because of that, I personally feel like I was unfair to Third back in the day due to my personal expectations, and while I certainly still have my problems with the game, it's definitely a lot better than I gave it credit for. See, at the time what I wanted to see was more of Zemuria and get more of what I liked about second chapter, and in hindsight, TrailsFromZero was the game I was looking for. Now, tonally, this game slides somewhere in between Sky first chapter and second chapter as far as stakes are concerned. This game still spends a good amount of its runtime developing the setting, world, and characters. However, the plot is a bigger driving force this time around compared to first chapter, which makes things a lot more exciting. So let's go ahead and talk about the basic premise. Zero takes place shortly after TrailsIntheSky III and follows a brand new main character named Lloyd Bannings. Lloyd is an up-and-coming detective who finds himself placed into a weird new division of the Crossbell Police Department known as the Special Support Section, or SSS for short. During the intro, he is introduced to his co-workers and party members, Ellie McDowell, Randy Orlando, and Tio Plato. The four are sent on a training mission in the city's sewer system known as the Geofront, and afterwards are told the purpose of their division. What is the purpose of the SSS? Well, the simple answer is to get over barriers. As explained in the previous section, corruption has run rampant within the government, and because of that, the SSS was formed under Chief Sergey. The function of this department being to win back some of the goodwill from the Bracers. How? Well, by doing what the Bracers do. Your job is to not only look into crime, but to also do small jobs for people much like the Bracers. If you don't know what a Bracer is, please play the Sky games or watch my previous video. Now, one thing that sets this apart from Sky is there are a lot more moments where the game will ask you to pay attention and make decisions. This is where Lloyd actually gets to do some police work. Since Lloyd is a detective, a big part of this plot is about unraveling mysteries, and because of that, this game very much expects you to pay attention, with many choices actively affecting how many points you obtain from story quests. Previous games, notably first chapter, certainly have mystery as a big part of their narrative, but it is a core aspect of Zero. There are tons of plot threads, suspicious individuals, intrigue, and everything you would expect from a mystery narrative. Now, I grew up with a lot of underdog buddy cop shows, and Zero does a good job of blending that genre into the Trails universe. And because of that, I think the story of this game is really well paced and doesn't really meander like Sky First Chapter and ColdSteel 1 later on tend to do. A lot can happen within a single chapter, and you are actually rewarded for paying attention and trying to unravel the mystery yourself, and because of this, I believe this is the best paced introductory game of the series by a country mile. And a lot of that is helped by a beautiful cohesion between the gameplay setting and narrative. Crossbell is super small compared to Liberal, being about 1/3 of its size, and because of that you actually get a lot more intimate with Crossbell as you go back and forth across the country. If I had to compare this to Sky First Chapter narratively, I'd say the first chapter has some far more impactful highs, but I find Zero to be a much more exciting game throughout its entire runtime, but this is a very different story than First Chapter, and I think which one you prefer will be largely up to preference, but I think one thing they both share is a great cast of characters. Let's start with the SSS. Ellie McDowell is the most level-headed one of the group, serving as the tactician and negotiator. Personality-wise, she's just kind of the level-headed nice girl, so she is probably the most boring, but she has a pretty great backstory that ties into the themes of the game, and she's important to the group, and I like her a lot. Then there's Randy Orlando, the bruh man. Randy is a laid-back big brother of the group and considers himself a bit of a playboy, though often he finds himself one-upped by Lloyd's natural charisma, and it leads to some funny moments. He originally worked with the Crossbell Guardian Force, basically the military, but his flirtatious attitude got him kicked out. He is no joke with his combat abilities though, and he often has some of the best lines. One of my favorite things about him is that he gives a lot of characters some fun little nicknames, and it's a really cute trait of his. And then there's the fan favorite, Tio Plato. She is an incredibly smart girl who is able to hack into anything. She can also detect changes in the elements, more on that later, and can also talk to animals. However, her most memorable trait is that she has a massive obsession with Mishy. Mishy is basically the mascot character of Crossbell, featuring his own amusement park, which feels like a bit of a parody of Disneyland, and he is adorable as heck. I legit bought the limited edition of ColdSteel 3 just to get one because, I mean, look at him! Look at him! Mishy also became a mainstay mascot for Falcom not too long after this game, and I figured it was worth noting his origin here. Going back to Tio, she is a huge Mishy fangirl, can recite Mishy lore to you, and also this is a really cute touch, but you can see a Mishy keychain under her ornament in the menu. In fact, you can see little personal touches on every character's ornament screen, which I find really endearing and cool. And then there's our main character, Lloyd Bannings. While he certainly doesn't have the bright energy of Estelle, he is a really likable guy. He is very smart due to his training to be a detective, and is also kind of a big ball of cheese. This man loves to give heroic speeches and is also kind of dense when it comes to the girls around him. But overall, Overall, if I had to use one word to describe Lloyd, it would be determined. He is a very confident person, and while at times it can make him less complex than other JRPG heroes, there's just this charisma to him, and I just like him a lot. There's more than one reason I wanted to cosplay as him. He's a cool guy and a strong contender with Estelle for my favorite Trails character. Also, while he's not playable, I'd be remiss not to mention Chief Sergei, the gruff supervisor of the group. He acts as the middleman between the special support section and the main department, allowing you to act with a bit more freedom. But I really like his gruff attitude, but he's not really a jerk about it either. He's just kind of a fun character and I like him a lot. Now, since this is a JRPG, the narrative reveals a lot more about these characters than I mentioned here, but you'll just have to play the game and find out. But I adore the special support section, and there are many other characters I also love in this game. First is Wazi Hemisphere and Walled Whales. Also, I just want to say that these names. These two run gangs in the South District of Crossbell known as the Testaments and Saber Vipers. Wazi is a calm and suave guy with a name that feels like it walked straight out of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, with his character design also reminding me of Bucciarati from Part 5. His gang are known as the Testaments, wearing all blue, with Wazi's right-hand man Abbas helping run it. Wald is a gruff man with a face that looks like it walked straight out of Bleach. He runs the Saber Vipers, your more traditional gangsters. I feel like I just set up a really weird shonen war by making these comparisons. Both of these characters actually have a lot of fun development over the course of these games, and I really like them a lot, especially Wazi. Noel Seeker is probably one of my top contenders for Best Girl. She is a member of the Crossbell Guardian Force and she's a big vehicle nut. Noel also has an airhead sister named Fran who works at the police station, and you meet her pretty early on. I like both of them a lot. And then there's Alex Dudley, or Doodles as I sometimes call him. He's a member of the Crossbell Police 1st Division, which looks into some more serious cases. He is a super by-the-book serious type, but underneath it he's a super caring guy. Then there's Rixia Mao, my actual best girl for the Trails series. I know, the most milquetoast take, but what can I say? She's a member of the Arc NCL Theater group, which does performances in the entertainment district. She was picked up by the group leader Ilya, who is, touchy, but Rixia is dedicated to the group and she's cute. I don't want to say too much for now, but I really like what they end up doing with her. She needs to be in more games, man. Lastly, we have Arios MacLean. He is a masterclass S-rank bracer, just like Cassius in the last game, as well as a practitioner of the 8 leaves, 1 blade sword style, and the divine blade of wind. Suffice to say, Arios is awesome, and I actually like him a lot. He's a pretty chill guy and is considered the local hero of Crossbell. Arios also has a blind daughter named Shizuku, and they have a real wholesome dynamic. As far as the plot is concerned, he serves as a nice metaphor for the force that SSS is up against trying to one-up the bracers, since he is the best bracer around. There are so many characters I love and chose to gloss over here, as this game has a massive cast of characters overall, but I like most of them. The plot of the Crossbell games definitely has a lot more going on than the Sky games, but in my opinion it handles the juggling act very, very well. Also, unlike the other 2 arc introductions, despite this game setting up the next game, the experience is pretty standalone, with the exception of one subplot. Alright, so I'm going to talk about that subplot now. So before I go into spoilers, I will say that there is one prominent subplot from the Sky games that was left hanging. If you played those games, especially Sky the Third, you probably already know what subplot I'm referring to. This game not only continues this subplot, but majorly develops it. This is the biggest problem of recommending Zero as a first Trails game, since you'll not only be missing some added context for the subplot, but it also spoils the Sky games, especially second chapter. So before I talk about this, please use this timestamp right here to skip some spoilers for the Sky games, as well as minor spoilers for this game. I will not be filtering the subplot anymore, so please use this timestamp right here to skip. Alright, are we good? Here we go. Estelle and Joshua are in this game. So if you played Sky 2nd Chapter and Sky the 3rd, this game continues the Ren subplot from the last 2 games. At the end of 2nd Chapter, Estelle and Joshua left on a journey to fight Ouroboros and look for Ren. After a small excursion in Erebonia, I will talk about a different time, they arrived in Crossbell when they were sucked into Phantasma in Sky the 3rd. In Phantasma, they reunited with Ren, who joined the group to help them escape. During 3rd, you can learn her backstory, and at the end of the game, Ren had a last exchange with Estelle and Joshua, where they said they wanted her to join their family. After escaping Phantasma, they returned to where they were when 3rd began, retaining their memories of the adventure. Now, at the start of this game, Estelle and Joshua are in Crossbell searching for Ren, while Ren observes things from the shadows. Now, I won't say too much about the events in this game, but this subplot is just a whole truck of feels for anyone who played the previous games. I've seen some say that this subplot even ends up overshadowing the main characters, and while I understand that and even could kind of agree in a few places, I actually just love the way they managed to incorporate this plotline from the Sky games. The way it all paid off got me crying like crazy the first time I played this, and what sucks is it may not even mean much to someone who doesn't have the context of the previous games. But I do want to contest that the actions of our main party are vital to the payoff of this subplot, and I just want to make that clear. This isn't the Estelle Show 3.0, it's still very much the Special Support Section's game, just with the added bonus of Estelle, Joshua, and Ren here. One of my favorite parts of this narrative by far. Overall, I love the story of this game. It has a lot of exciting highs, with the most notable low being that Chapter 3 kind of goes on a little bit longer than the other chapters, which is not really a huge complaint, it's just something I noticed. Still, Chapter 3 has a lot of great moments during it, and I like the chapter a lot, but just felt it was worth mentioning. The entire second half of this game is one wild ride and has probably some of my favorite moments in the entire Trails series, with an ending that managed to make me cry again, which at this point I think the writers just know how to get me, and as the series' first foray outside of Liberl and its cast, I think they totally nailed it. Alright, I think that's enough about the story, let's talk about the gameplay. Let's start with Crossbell itself in a little more detail since we obviously spend most of the game exploring it. In the center of the country is Crossbell City, featuring multiple districts. Outside the city there's the 4 surrounding areas: the Aramarika Farm Village, St. Ursula Hospital next to Lake Elm, the Mainz Mining Village, and the Police Training Academy you can't go to in this game, but you can in Azure. Now, unlike Liberl, you are not locked to one region every chapter. Over the course of the game, you will slowly gain access to more and more of Crossbell, eventually opening up the entire region, with no points of no return up until the final chapter. Now, while that may sound like a lot of places to keep track of, it's surprisingly manageable. Like I said before, this is because of the size of Crossbell, as well as the fast travel options in this game. Inside of Crossbell City, you can select city locations from the map screen, and outside of Crossbell City, you can ride the bus to go between bus stops. It is incredibly convenient and speeds up backtracking immensely. Even then, traveling on foot doesn't take too long, especially with Turbo, and enemies don't scale up with your level for good chunks of the game, making older areas much easier to explore. The layout of Crossbell really reminds me of Majora's Mask, where you had Clocktown as a central hub with multiple regions branching out in 4 directions, making it not only easy to return to places, but also cutting down on fluff in the story and world design. Now, since the special support section is trying to function like bracers, this game is once again built around accepting quests. However, quests are still as missable as always, though I think they are a little more generous with when they expire this time around, but you'll still want to check the PC and the base as often as you can. There are still hidden quests in this game, but they're usually no more than 2 per chapter, but I don't think there's any shame in using a guide here in this situation. A jarring change coming off the Sky games is the removal of the free camera while exploring, but after playing this game I actually found myself not missing it too much. Since the camera and map designs are built around the fixed camera now, it's easy to digest everything and not get turned around. Plus, the camera in the Sky games was sometimes kind of bad, since it was stuck at a downwards angle, and that meant that especially in large fields it was very easy to get turned around, and this is an issue the Crossbell games never have. Now, fishing returns in this game, and despite me still getting over the existential horrors from last time, it's actually a fun time in this game. The fishing in this game works pretty much the same as Sky's second chapter, not much to say there aside from the fact that I can now confirm the timing is much more generous. Also, unlike second chapter, you actually get rewards for fishing this time around, and since you can now backtrack, I like fishing in this game a lot. This is also the game that officially cemented this as a mainstay side activity in the series, but I will have more to say about this in Azure. This is also where the gluttonous bass makes its triumphant first appearance. This fish is often referred to as the fish, and it's a bit of a meme in the community, and I love it. Cooking also returns in this game, but got a bit of a tweak this time around. First, you now learn recipes by reading books and talking to NPCs in missable windows, and you do not learn them from eating dishes. I'm actually not a fan of this change, though Azure also handles this a little differently, but I'll talk about that when we get there. But for a change I like a lot is now more than just Lloyd can cook. Now all 4 of your party members can cook, with each party member having different skill levels with different dishes. Additionally, you can get multiple results from the same recipe, meaning that there is RNG involved now, but it's fun to experiment with. Some of the dishes you can create shatter the game balance in 2, while some bad dishes in this game have some wacky side effects, like a dice roll between instant death and full CP. Starting from this game, I actually use the cooking mechanic more than I thought I would, and it's just a fun system. Now, I wasn't sure where best to slip this in, but this is also the game that introduced bonding points, though it is not executed quite like later games. In this game, it's sort of like the affection system in Final Fantasy VII or Tales of Symphonia. Basically, by choosing to bring certain party members in situations or fulfilling other requirements, you'll build bonding points with that character. If you build up enough, you can get a special scene with that character at the very end of the game. It's fun and definitely adds replay value. And also there's this one scene that alters depending on how many quests you complete, and I just kind of find that one amusing in particular. So yeah, fun stuff. As you progress through the game, you can find little decorations and shops for everyone's rooms. This is not only a way to get bonding points, but is also a cosmetic that transfers to Azure, which I absolutely adore. Most notably Lloyd's boombox, which actually plays songs from the game when you interact with it. Earlier I mentioned how each character has a unique ornament keychain. Well, you can actually buy custom plates for your ornaments in this game on top of that. It's something that sticks around after this game, but it's a fun cosmetic to spend money on. Though there are only single plates you can buy in this game, meaning that they largely just exist as a way to get bonding points for your party in this game, but hey, it's neat. On the topic of the ornaments, I'm surprised at how they handled them coming back to this game. Basically, they went back to the 2-slot system from second chapter, which surprised me because I expected them to go back to the single slots like the first game, but no, this game gives you the 2-slot system, meaning that you have a lot more options in regards to handling your quartz loadout this time around, and I really dig that. If you did not see my Sky video, there's a whole element balance system that determines what arts you can use. If you want to see what spells you can get, there's a spell list in your notebook just like before. Once again, I go into this in much more detail in my Sky first chapter review, so watch that if you haven't. But since we're here, let's go ahead and talk about the combat. You guys know I've been waiting for this part. So a lot of what I'm about to talk about will sound new to Sky players, but familiar to ColdSteel players. So strap in because the amount of additions this game added to the combat is kind of wild. TrailsFromZero's combat fundamentally plays like the previous games, and so because of that I won't repeat myself too much. If you want me to go into detail, you can watch my previous video, but I'll give the short version here. The combat is a turn-based battle system where actions have area of effect properties. You have character unique skills called crafts, and materia-esque magic called arts that have a casting time. The combat is also dictated by a dynamic turn order, with turn bonuses that appear on the wheel including stuff like guaranteed critical damage. Now there's obviously a lot more to it than that, but again watch the previous video to hear me explain in more detail, as this is built on the previous game's battle systems. Now because this is the beginning of a new arc, this is the first game to make some big sweeping changes to the combat. First, let's start with what they removed. The chain crafts from Sky's second chapter have been removed in favor of 2 new mechanics. A new mechanic I will talk about in a little bit, as well as a new team rush bonus on the turn wheel. When you get this bonus, all of your characters get to attack at once. However, if an enemy gets it, all enemies get an immediate turn, so watch out for that. The remote ability skill from third is also gone in this game, but given that your party is way smaller this time around, that's to be expected. Speaking of third, that game's turn bonuses have all been removed. Most of the time. There are instances where you'll enter a dungeon and Teal will mention that the higher elements are present. When that happens, it's third rules, baby. Space, time, and mirage arts are all included in the weakness typing, along with all the bonuses I talked about in third. This makes those bonuses a bit more situational and maintains the world building, which is really cool. I enjoyed third, but admittedly some of those turn bonuses could be kind of rage-inducing, so keeping that localized to certain dungeons is definitely for the best. Vanished. The one exception to this is the rush turn bonus, as you can encounter that anywhere now, not just in higher element places. Now this is where we get into the new stuff. First, crafts have gotten a pretty substantial buff in this game compared to prior, with many of them breaking this game's balance in two. But if you like arts, the element balance system is still very intact with not much change from before. Now my personal favorite addition is the combo crafts. This is a bit different from the chain crafts, as these are basically Team S crafts. You have to spend 100 CP for both characters, but they are super strong and really fun to set up for. The animations are also really neat, and as a Chrono Trigger fan, I'm a sucker for stuff like this. This game also contains a small but significant change to the UI compared to before. In the Sky games, you had to awkwardly navigate outside of the actual menu bar to activate someone's S-craft, which took time and really was inconvenient. However, in this game, while holding down a button, you can select an S-craft merely by clicking on the D-pad, saving you unnecessary reaction time. Another addition in this game is reserve party members. This mechanic is rarely used in this game, but is given a lot more legroom in Azure. Reserve characters will hang out in the back and can be swapped in outside of battle, which overall is a much needed change to how second chapter and third handled having more than 4 party members.
But wait! There's more!
However, your reserve party members participate in battle too. Occasionally you'll see reserve party members show up on the turn list, and when they get a turn they will usually have one of 2 actions they will take. These actions are unique to every character and can be pretty handy depending on the situation. It's really neat. Now for a small change that actually changes how combat can be played a lot is the introduction of a counterattack mechanic. When you or an enemy miss an attack, the target gets a guaranteed counterattack. While I won't give away why this is busted just yet, just take my word for it, it is, and it ain't going away anytime soon. Another great addition to this game are tactical bonuses at the end of fights. Depending on how you perform during battles, you will get a multiplier on the experience you obtain. The system is really nice because it actually rewards you for fighting well, and it is a mainstay after this game. Now, I didn't touch on this in the previous games because it kinda sucked in the Sky games, but there was a preemptive strike system in them. It was fine, I guess, but it needed a lot of refinement. Because of that, I often relied on quartz to stop enemies from spotting me altogether to keep my sanity in those games. That said, the Sky games did allow you to run away from all fights guaranteed, which is sweet considering you got jumped really easily in that game, but it definitely felt like a band-aid solution, that's for sure. Crossbell considerably revamps this system. The original preemptive system still exists, but now you can attack on the overworld to stun enemies. If you manage to stun them and then touch them from behind, you will get what is called a max advantage. When you get a max advantage, you either have 5 crits or a team attack at the start of a fight. This actually trivializes most encounters and is probably a bit too reliable once you get a feel for it, but it's still definitely preferable to the way Sky handled it. Additionally, you can freely swap your lead party members with the press of a button, and all of them have their own unique field attacks, and it's incredibly fun to experiment with. Additionally, if you are a way higher level than the enemy, they will run from you on the field now. When this happens, you can kill them with your regular attacks without even fighting them. Or if an enemy is your current level, you can just lock the enemy in place like... On the flip side though, if an enemy manages to get a jump on you, it is much more punishing. Unlike the Sky games, you no longer have guaranteed escapes, but a really nice quality of life change is the game shows you your percent chance of escape. If you do get jumped, you start at 0% and it goes up by 15% every attempt, so do try to avoid getting jumped where possible. But this game does keep the retry system of previous games though, so definitely use that if you need to. Though there is also no retry offset this time, so do be careful about that this time around. This game also introduces chain battles. If multiple mobs of enemies are nearby, you may find yourself doing multiple fights in a row. This simplifies the process of running into enemies for a bit, but it's something you want to keep in mind. Now I do have one criticism for the Crossbell games, and it's something they should have fixed 2 games ago. See that chain of party members? Well, they are part of your active hitbox, meaning it is very easy to get jumped. And unfortunately, it's still in this... So, in the PC and Switch ports, they added a brand new setting where your lead party member is the only one who can get jumped. While this makes getting preemptive strikes even easier now, this is an incredible change. To my surprise, this feature is also in the PS4 version, so PlayStation 4 players, you are still blessed with this change, and I am so happy they did this. Another fun tweak is the introduction of high-level monster chests. They will give you a level requirement so you know to come back later, but if you want to, you can challenge them early. This is fun considering most of Crossbell is available to you at all times, so you have ample objective to return to chests and try them again, and I love that. Now, I've already talked about all of the new mechanics and everything, but how is the actual balance of this game? Funny. Okay, so here's the deal. TrailsFromZero starts off balanced closer to first chapter, but with the benefit of having a full party at all times, and having a decent selection of crafts. But as you progress through the game, you gain access to some insanely broken crafts. I'll go into this in more detail in Azure, but I want to highlight one skill in particular. That skill is Burning Heart, which is basically Dragon Ball's Kaioken. While active, Lloyd ignores status ailments, gets a pretty substantial buff to his attack and defense, and gets an immediate action when it's used. The downside is that after a few turns he does burn out for 1 turn, however you can continuously reset if you have the CP, which you can very easily do with gladiator belts. This move is incredibly cheesy and can shred some fights. This is one of the many reasons I think this game has a sharp difficulty drop compared to 3rd, at least after the prologue. Worth mentioning though, I am a huge Trails nut and I know the combat really well, so it could just be my experience with the series shining through here. Now with all of these additional mechanics and tweaks, and it's definitely a lot of them, I don't think I need to point out how much easier this game is than the previous 3. I will say that if you do pick this as your first Trails, you should probably play on normal, but if you are a veteran of the Sky series, hard might be more comfortable. Whereas Nightmare is still pretty intense, but definitely doable. Overall, the combat and general game loop just feels significantly more streamlined than the previous titles, and while some of the difficulty is gone as a consequence, I just have fun making the most busted builds possible, and this is where that really starts to get a focus in the series. Also, the S-crafts in this are as flashy as ever, and with the added combo crafts, it's just a visual treat using your moves in this game. On the topic of the S-crafts though, let's talk about the presentation. As you can tell, this game has the same visual style as the previous 3 games, though I think their skill with the engine has improved a lot with this game. Unlike Liberal, where a good chunk of the areas outside of towns are just kind of winding roads or overly spacious fields, Crossbell has a ton of very memorable set pieces to keep each region feeling distinct, and it feels very real and lived in as a result. After looking at some artwork I got from the special edition, I think most of these places are actually on model to existing concept art. They actually managed to preserve most of the detail in the artwork that I did see, which I find really impressive, and I really would like to see more art like this if it exists out there. On the topic of the artwork though, the art style of this game actually took a significant change from the Sky trilogy. Where Sky's art style had more of a 90s anime vibe, Crossbell feels a little more modern. This is because they hired Katsuni Inami as the artist for this game. He is famous for doing various artwork for different series, such as the character designs for Bakano, a light novel series with an anime I definitely recommend if you can find it. This man is currently my favorite artist to have worked on the Trail series so far, and I was really happy to hear that he got hired back to work on the Kuro games going on in Japan. This game also features full Japanese voice acting, but that wasn't always the case with this game. The original PSP and PC releases of this game had small snippets of voice acting, but they were largely text-based like the Sky games. It wasn't until the Evolution re-releases I will talk about later that they introduced full Japanese voice acting to the games, and this was one of the few features to survive the Evolution port. Now there is no English dub in this game, possibly so that NIS can focus on the upcoming Trails into Reverie. I do know people who are understandably disappointed that there's no English dub in this game, as there are a lot of diehard fans of the ColdSteel dub. But I actually adore the Japanese voice cast. Every voice actor has a lot of fun in their roles and really enhances the scenes as someone that originally played Zero with no voice acting. In particular, I'm a big fan of Lloyd's voice since it captures his cheesy personality perfectly.
そんなことは。
確かに今日はいろいろとへこまされることが多かった。でもそんなのは働いてれば当たり前のことなんだ。そして今日乗り越えられなかった壁は明日には乗り越えられるかもしれない。
壁。
With Randy also being a big standout for me since he injects a lot of fun into every single scene.
ストライクの真ん中。よし、みなぎってきたぜ。いや、俺は幸せだな。お前みたいなマブダチと巡り合うことができて。というわけで、紹介よろしくね。
あのな。
But okay, on the topic of sound, we have finally arrived. You all knew I was going to talk about the soundtrack, so what do I think? I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. The music in this game is sort of a transition between the Sky games and the ColdSteel games as far as sound goes, and it's so good. So one thing I should mention about the Sky games is the soundtrack in those games was a lot more subdued and jazzy, whereas this definitely feels a lot more modern to reflect its current setting. This is one of the few soundtracks where I like pretty much every single song. There's a much larger emphasis on rock and epic orchestration for the battle themes, with each of the surrounding regions having its own overworld theme. Even the cutscene music is a bop sometimes in this game, with an early standout being the Crossbell Police Department theme. It uses a type of synth piano that I don't actually hear that often that I associate with Mega Man Star Force, which is another soundtrack I adore, so that's a huge compliment from me. This one was really hard for me to pick a good enough sample to represent how good the soundtrack is in my opinion, but I'll just go ahead and share some of my favorites for the sake of time, so here we go. There's the Geofront theme, having this subdued industrial feel to it with a melody that feels like it's fighting its way to the surface. The main battle theme, Get Over the Barrier, truly capturing Lloyd's determination. And my personal favorite track in the game, and a lot of people's personal favorite, Inevitable Struggle. music in this game has all the right combination of atmospheric tracks, chill tracks, and catchy tracks, and has yet another final boss theme that just slaps. I won't share any more tracks because this video is already long enough as it is, but Intense Chase, Arrest the Criminal, pretty much any of the area themes, just everything, I love this soundtrack so much. This soundtrack is easily in my top 3 Trails soundtracks, and if you play this game, you'll hear nothing but bangers. Now before we wrap this up, there's a few other things I want to mention, so let's go ahead and do that. First of all, books make a return in this game. My favorite being Back Alley Dr. Glenn, a pretty enjoyable read set in the country of Remiferia. There's also a library with a collection of short stories you can keep up with, such as Mark and the Witch of the Deep Forest. Also returning is the Crossbell Times, which is basically like the liberal news from the Sky games. It's just nice to have all of this back. This game also brings back the chess messages, which I am so happy about. Xseed and After That NIS were largely unable to implement this joke into the ColdSteel games, so it makes me very happy that they went and brought it back for this. Shockingly, they actually kept a lot of the chess messages from the Geofront version, and I love that. Though I gotta say, they baited us so bad. The first 2 chests only say the chest is empty, so I legitimately thought that they had removed them, but no, it was only the first 2 chests, so you guys got me good. Good job. Now, I mentioned in the last video how NPCs in Liberal updated over the course of the chapters, and that you could follow entire subplots with them. Well, Crossbell does the same thing, but with the entire region. NPCs all over Crossbell have entire game-long subplots you can keep up with if you invest the time. These subplots will carry over into the sequel, and it's such an insane attention to detail. Now, keeping up with all of them is a very big ask, and I don't recommend it to everyone, and it will almost certainly double your playtime if you try to, but I'd say early on to pick the ones you do want to follow, and it'll improve your experience immensely. For me, I really love the duo of Bennett and Oscar in the Morg's Bakery. Bennett considers Oscar her rival and is always trying to outbake him, but over the course of the games you realize that there may be a little bit more going on there. It's cute. There's also a little girl named Jingo who helps out with her mom's weapon shop. She has a rude attitude and a bad mouth, but has some funny moments I really like across both this game and Azure. This game also brings back New Game Plus, but with a crucial difference. See, like with any modern game, this game has achievements. However, those achievements are also in the game itself, each giving you points. After beating the game, you can spend those points on New Game Plus features, artwork, and other perks. This is somewhat similar to the grade system in the Tales of games. Now, I imagine this may be divisive for some people since the Sky games just let you choose what you want without requiring you to overachieve, but I personally just like that you have tangible rewards for achievement hunting in this game, and it's the first game I've ever platinumed. That said, this directly leads into a small list of things I don't like about this game, which is not much to be honest. I just really like this game overall, but it's worth mentioning. First of all, despite working with Geofront's script, NIS let a decent amount of typos slip into the final product. In all fairness, the scripts of these games are massive, and it's kind of inevitable that some would slip through if you ask me. I know some people really hate this, but I do think a lot of these will be fixed up in patches, so I'm not too torn up over it. I think the funniest one to me is when you get your ultimate weapon, or as I will call them now, the color text weapons. On that note, I brought up that I platinumed this game. Well, that took 5 playthroughs on New Game Plus for me to do it. That meant to true 100% this game, I had to get all color text weapons, all achievements, and all upgraded combo crafts from the final bonding events. Now, if you optimize things a little better, you could probably do it in 4 playthroughs, but that's still 4 playthroughs. While it doesn't take too long to replay this game and get the other bonding events, around 6 to 8 hours per run depending on if you do a bunch of side quests, it is certainly not ideal. Adding on to this, to get every color text weapon you have to collect every single Back Alley Dr. Glenn book and trade it in at the very end of the game. This is something the later Trails games do as well, but it led to my speedruns being oriented around talking to NPCs in very specific windows, and I don't think everyone would be willing to do this. But hey, this is still leagues better than completing Sword of Mana at least. Something I did not expect to be impressed by coming back to this game is the dungeon designs. A lot of the places in this had a bunch of thought put into player progression. While it's not quite on the level of Golden Sun or anything, I think this game had some of the better dungeon designs I've encountered in a turn-based RPG. To get specific, any Geofront dungeon is a highlight of the game for me. There's a lot of complex passageways, valves to activate, paths that open up, level design that loops around. It's just the right combination of confusing and fun, and I did not expect to praise that here. There's also a Geofront dungeon that is exclusive to New Game Plus, and it's probably the best of the Geofront dungeons. Though it does kind of suck that it is exclusive to New Game Plus, but it gave me something to do on the second go around, so hey, I didn't mind it. Sorry, I guess I was supposed to be talking about negatives here, well. Honestly, the fact that I was willing to do those replays at all should say everything about how much I love this game, and I will probably replay it again in the future at some point, especially as mods come out for it. Fantastic game. Back in 2020, Trails from Zero was everything I hoped it would be. While I will admit I was most excited at the time to get into the ColdSteel games, this game completely won me over. After revisiting this game, I still love it. This game manages to take the formula and gameplay format of the Sky games and evolves it. The story has a lot more consistent and exciting story beats, the combat is more fun than it has ever been, the music is amazing, and this game manages to take the presentation style of the Sky games to the next level with an incredibly memorable setting. I've seen some people say that they think this is one of the weaker Trails story-wise, but I cannot disagree enough. I find the mystery angle pretty enticing, the political themes intriguing, the characters likable. Really not much I can say wrong about this one aside from saying that maybe some of the character building in the Sky games is better, and maybe the swerve at the end of this game is a little sudden for some people, but I loved it. But just to make one thing clear, I still think Trails in the Sky first chapter is the best starting point for appreciating the narrative. However, I think the way this game handles this subplot could still be enjoyed by a newcomer if you ask me, but if you're a fan of the previous games, the subplot of this game is something you really need to experience and you're missing out if you don't. Also, as someone that does play these games for the gameplay to a large extent, I just think this is a fun game. They expanded the battle system and the overworld exploration in some phenomenal ways. If you like the combat in the last few games, you might be in for a treat, and if you are a fan of the later games, you are also in for a treat. As for the main story and experience, I think this is a solid as heck game, and I'm very glad it managed to, officially this time, get over the barrier. I want to thank Geofront so much for doing the original translation. If it weren't for them, I may not have even been able to play these games in English whatsoever. We don't even know if the NIS version would even exist, or at least come out as quickly as it did. And despite a messy pre-release period, NIS did pull together a really great adaptation of Geofront's original script, and the new additions on PC and Switch really make the game feel fresh, and is probably the best version of the game to date, barring like one feature that the Geofront had that I did not expect them to add anyway, so that's okay. Really great version, good job. This game is currently going for a full $40, which is a little more than third, but given all of the changes, additions, and replay value, I think that is a very solid price. This game is not as long as second chapter, but it still has plenty of content. Not to mention all versions feature full Japanese voice acting, which the original Geofront version did not have at default. So get it, support the games, just maybe not the PS4 version if the added features really matter to you. This is easily the longest I've ever gushed about any of these games so far, and this is only my third favorite Trails game. But now that we have gotten over the barrier, the only thing left to do is to seize the truth. Alright everyone, I'm afraid that's going to have to be it for this video. I know. I really want to talk about TrailsToAzure, but that will not be releasing until March, so that begs the question, what now? Well, one thing that I do want to clarify about why I'm waiting until then for TrailsToAzure is I really wanted to cover the official releases of these games, since that is how most people are going to be experiencing the games, but on top of that, it also gives me a break. I've been back in college for a bit. Well, at least, like, I went back to college basically at the same time I started getting ready for this video, and, it's been an experience. So, one thing I should say is one of the classes I've had has been super killer, super stressful, I hate it, and editing this video alongside of it has been a whole big ball of stress. You guys have already seen what the whole video is like, and this is one of the longest reviews I've ever done, and I was juggling that, and I'm really happy that I finally got this done in time, but figured it was worth mentioning. But that said, in the meantime between now and TrailsToAzure, let's go ahead and cut to the chase. What's gonna happen now? Well, I had some ideas. I had a extracurricular content video planned for in between the ColdSteel games, but after thinking about it, I was thinking a lot of the content that I was going to cover in it, some canon, non-video game content for the series, that I could actually cover that in smaller bits in between videos and all of that, and I think that could be something fun to kind of just spend some time on. Some ideas I had was stuff like the Sky OVA, even though I already kind of talked about that one, I could talk about it in more detail. I also was thinking of talking about some mangas, like there was the Louve spin-off manga, there was the TrailsFromZero prequel manga, and I'm just going to leave that up to you guys, what you guys would want to see, so if you guys want me to cover anything, you can comment down below, and I can look into making a video, possibly. I may even do some polls, so keep an eye out for that in the community post, but yeah. Above all, though, the reason that I'm even saying all of that is I want to thank you guys so much for the support on these videos. For the record, I have been a small channel for pretty much the entirety of this channel's existence, which has been 8 years. I did Let's Play content for a very long time, so seeing a series like this do fairly consistently well, at least by my channel standards, has honestly been really good, because I've wanted to make game reviews for a bit, but usually my choices have honestly not paid off great. So seeing you guys support these videos has seriously meant a lot to me. But even beyond that though, this channel is kind of a hobby at the end of the day. I would like it to become more than a hobby, but honestly, I've been at this for 8 years, like I said, so at this point it's just still a hobby. But if you guys would like to support the channel to, you know, help increase things, you guys can check out my Ko-Fi and Redbubble down in the description. Ko-Fi, basically, you guys can donate as little as $1, and you guys can view videos like this a whole week early. Doesn't happen very often, but if I make those smaller videos, it'll definitely be a little bit better of a payoff for you guys, I think. There's also a Redbubble where you guys can also basically buy physical merch. For the record, I also do artwork. That is a side thing that I do, and you can basically also commission me on Ko-Fi, and all that money will go straight to me, and basically I will make artwork for you guys. So that's one thing, and you guys will still get the perk as if you donated as well, so that way you can still view videos early, and you also get artwork out of it. So hey, I think that's a win-win. But yes, anyway, I also would just like to see you guys comment what you guys think of TrailsFromZero in the comments down below. Of course, you guys already know I love this game a lot. I mean, I made a friggin' 50-minute video about it, so I think that should say something. So if you guys could go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of the game, I would like to see that and just get your opinions on it. Again, I think it's a fantastic game, but opinions differ. I like to see what you guys think. And aside from that, though, again, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I hate saying that, but the reason I say that is some people will watch a whole video like this and just kind of forget to subscribe. So if you guys can go ahead and do so, you'll be able to view more Trails content. So please hit that subscribe button, and you'll get more like this. Either way, I will see you guys in whatever video I do next. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Bye.